the main point I want to make here, Megyn, is this, which is I think Noah radically minimized the extent to which the United States is involved in Israel's wars and the extent to which the United States supports Israel. We give Israel $4 billion every year. Much of that, but not all, is used to buy arms from American arms dealers, but it's still a transfer of wealth to Israel. $4 billion, by far more than any other country gets over decades, even though millions of Israelis have a higher standard of living than millions of Americans. On top of that, we don't just provide them with arms, we also pay for their wars. We often involve ourselves in their conflict. You pointed out that yesterday or the day before, we did send fighter jets to take down missiles. It was defensive, but we are involved that way, and also by bombing Yemen. And we isolate ourselves diplomatically to protect Israel. All the time there are UN resolutions supported by almost every country in the world, and we use our veto power to protect Israel. And many leading military officials like David Petraeus have said that a major reason why we're so at risk in the Middle East, why our service members are, why our assets are, is because that region perceives that we are always tied to the hip with Israel. And I think it is a legitimate question to ask. It goes far beyond a normal alliance. Why it is that we pay for Israel's wars, we arm Israel's wars, we give them $4 billion a year, we sacrifice our soft power and standing in the world to protect them. And if we're going to do that, and I think it's really worth asking why can't Israel pay for its own wars? Then of course we also have the right to say, look, we're paying for your wars, we're giving you the weapons. There are things that we don't want you to do that harm our interests, like doing a major retaliatory attack against Iran that could very well drag us back into another Middle East war that Americans overwhelmingly don't want to be involved with. And I think that's the key to the U.S.-Israeli relationship, is that we are tied to them in ways that we are not tied to any other country in the world. We arm them, we pay for their wars, we do everything to protect them. It's a very unique and peculiar relationship.
What about the fact that, if we leave Israel to its own devices, we're worried that something like, an Iranian attack will happen. We certainly don't want to see Iran emboldened. One country's chanting death to America since 1979, as Noah points out. One country isn't. One country is an ally that is aligned with us on its views of democracy and what peace looks like in the world. Like, why wouldn't we do everything we can to shore up Israel, which, as Netanyahu and others have said, lives in a very tough neighborhood?
Israel is a nuclear power. They have an arsenal of nuclear weapons. They have one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world. They have a thriving economy. They have the Middle East, Silicon Valley. Why can't Israel take care of itself? Why can't Israel pay for its own wars? I think that's a big question. And when we tie ourselves to Israel, it does harm American interests in all sorts of ways. The potential to be dragged into another Middle East war is obviously significant, but also the anger and hatred toward Israel gets directed at the United States as well.
All right, but let me ask you about that one. I get that, and I cede that point, but I also feel like, Glenn, they hate us. They hate, like the Iranian, not the Iranian people, but like the leaders over in Iran. They're going to hate us less if we don't back Israel. I don't buy it. Hell no. They hate us because of our principles, because of our constitution, because of the way we live, because women walk around in tank tops. We could go down the list, but it's not going to go away if we stop supporting Israel.
Megyn, this was the debate about 9/11. Like, why did they hate us? Why did they attack us? And the neocon narrative was, oh, they hate us for our freedoms. And bin Laden repeatedly said, there was that letter that recirculated that was banned from TikTok. We are angry at America because they are constantly insinuating themselves into our region. They imposed a sanctions regime on Iraq that killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children. They put troops on Saudi soil. The reason Iran hates us, and I'm not justifying it at all, but I think it's very important to have an open eyes about your own country, is that in 1954, we overthrew their democratically elected government, the CIA did, and we imposed on them for the next 25 years one of the most savage and brutal dictatorships in the world, the Shah of Iran. And so when Iran had its revolution and finally deposed their dictator, the Shah of Iran, of course they knew the United States was responsible for his imposition on them for all those decades. And so they had a lot of animosity toward the United States. There are all kinds of countries in the world, Korea and Japan and Brazil and Norway, that have all the same freedoms as we do.
Yeah, but Glenn, I mean, you're looking at a country, Israel. Israel has a sense of due process and fairness, and Iran is hanging people from cranes. Iran is stoning women to death for not wearing the damn hijab. How the hell are we going to have a relationship with them? It's a no.
Megyn, we have relationships with the most savage dictators on the planet, our close allies.
But in this instance,
Saudi Arabia,
we do need to
and our
choose.
close allies in Egypt. Okay, but you have Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, all of which are American allies that are among the most brutal and savage dictatorships in the world. We're fine with having relationships, good relationships and alliances with countries that are extremely repressive, as long as they do the bidding of the United States.
One of the reasons is their hatred of Iran and vice versa. I mean, those two groups are Shiite versus Sunni, and there's a long-standing hatred between them. One of them wants to completely annihilate Israel, and one of them was actually open-minded to doing a deal with Israel and getting to a better place when we were backing Israel under Trump, when we were helping making it stronger. And these other allies, Saudi Arabia and the others, were starting to look at it like, you know what, maybe we are going to have to deal with this country. We were moving toward peace.
It's true. The dictators of Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf state regions understand that there can be economic benefits from a relationship with Israel. They don't represent the people of those countries. These are dictators imposed by military coups that the United States props up. And all I'm saying is we're very tribal as human beings. We always like to see things through the perspective of our side, to believe that we're the morally superior ones, we're the victims, they're the aggressors, they're evil. I understand the appeal of that narrative. But you were just talking about the multiple wars that we fought in the Middle East. We invaded Iraq and destroyed it. That strengthened Iran by strengthening the Shiite militias. Saddam Hussein was a vehement opponent of Iran. We created the vacuum out of which ISIS emerged. Even Tony Blair says that. We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. We've been bombing that region for a long time. I think on some level, we have to take some responsibility for why there's anti-American resentment in that region and ask whether that's worth it.
I agree with that. I don't disagree with you at all on that. And I'm very open-minded to, the growing strain of isolationism, for lack of a better term, in the Republican Party. And, you're not a Republican. But I mean, this country was sort of born into isolationism. That's how we were through the lead up to World War I. We didn't want anything to do with any of this. And we get sucked into these conflicts. And those two, as the T-shirt reads, back-to-back World War champions. And things have gone south for us ever since. Every war we get involved in.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. And so I'm not this bellicose pro-war neocon at all. I see the value in aligning with Israel. I see how evil the Iranian regime is. And I have absolutely no tolerance for the fucking bin Laden letter. Zero.
No, I'm not saying the bin Laden letter is good. I'm just saying it expresses the reasons why so many people in that region harbor anti-American sentiment. It's not because they love our freedom. I don't believe we should take bin Laden at his word. He hated us. No, but you go to anywhere. You go to anywhere in that region, and you ask people why they have there are all kinds of free countries around the world that people in that region don't hate. I said they don't hate South Korea. They don't hate. They're not the leader
Japan.
Of the free world. They don't hate Holland.
Oh, please. You can't compare any of those to America, but okay, keep going.
No, but you're saying that the reason they hate us is because we're free. And I'm saying that a big part of the reason they hate us is because we've been bombing that region for decades. We've been interfering in their government, overthrowing their democratically elected leaders, imposing dictatorships on them.
If we stop tomorrow, they will still bomb us. They will still try to get into the New World Trade Center. They will try to get into Wall Street. They will send ISIS. They will continue coming for us. It's over. There's no mending the fences with the radical Islamists who chant death to America, even if we don't support Israel.
There are, of course, radical groups in the Middle East that are just psychopaths like ISIS. But to assume that they're all just these primitive people on the warpath of violence without any rational cause or any rational reason, I think is a mistake. And the two things I just want to say is the two documents I just want to cite that I think are crucial to understand this context. One is the farewell address of George Washington when he said the whole point of our republic is that we're not going to have any enduring alliances with any country or any enduring enmity to any country as well. We're going to avoid international conflict that way. And then Dwight Eisenhower, when he oversaw the war machine in the military-industrial complex in the U.S. security state throughout the 1950s, when he left in 1961, he had 9 minutes on national TV to give his farewell address. And what he chose to use it for was to warn us about the grave dangers of the influence of the military-industrial complex, this permanent faction in Washington that exerts its own interests higher and more powerful than even our elected representatives. And what they always want is war, because that's how they profit and get power. And I think we have to be very much more alert to that danger than we have been.
There are some common sense reasons gold is pushing to all-time highs right now. The cost of goods continues to rise, for one, you know that. The national debt continues to skyrocket, above $34 trillion now, causing many to worry about when this house of cards is going to come crashing down and on whom. And then there's our presidential election year. That's going to have massive implications on the future of this country. All of this can add up to instability and uncertainty. And that's why many Americans are turning to Birch Gold Group. Have you diversified your savings yet? One option you could consider is to secure a portion of your savings with gold from Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and get your free information kit. You'll learn how to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold without costing you anything. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. Just text MK to 989898 to claim your free info kit and learn how you might protect your savings from uncertainty today. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.